Hello and welcome to Nap to History, a quiet space where we slow down and let the past unfold one soft story at a time. Tonight, we'll gently wander through the shadowed corners of ancient Egyptian civilization, not to admire the golden treasures or marvel at towering pyramids, but to uncover the hidden burden that came with being blessed by the gods with exceptional beauty. Whether you're lying down for the night or just taking a moment to breathe, I'm really glad you're here. If you find comfort in calm, thoughtful history, feel free to subscribe. There's always another peaceful chapter waiting. Before we begin this journey back in time, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and what time of day it is. For you, feel free to leave a comment and share if you enjoy calm historical storytelling like this. Let's take a moment to set the stage. Ancient Egypt, stretching along the life-giving Nile River for over 3,000 years, was a civilization obsessed with beauty, perfection, and divine aesthetics. From the perfectly symmetrical faces carved on temple walls to the elaborate cosmetic rituals performed daily by both men and women, beauty was not merely an ideal, it was a sacred duty, a reflection of divine favor, and paradoxically, often a curse that could destroy lives as easily as it could elevate them. In our modern world, we often romanticize the notion of ancient Egyptian beauty, picturing Cleopatra with her kohl-lined eyes and golden jewelry, or imagining the elegant nobility gliding through palace halls in flowing linen garments. But beneath this glamorous surface lay a complex web of expectations, dangers, and sacrifices that made extraordinary beauty as much a burden as a blessing. The very qualities that we might envy today, flawless skin, perfect symmetry, captivating eyes, could mark someone for a life of manipulation, political intrigue, religious obligation, and ultimately, tragic downfall. Our journey begins in the scorching heat of the Egyptian desert, where the relentless sun that gave life to the civilization also demanded a terrible price from those who sought to maintain the beauty standards decreed by the gods themselves. The daily ritual of achieving and maintaining beauty in ancient Egypt was far more than vanity. It was survival, devotion, and often agony rolled into one endless cycle. Every morning, as the first rays of Ra painted the eastern sky gold, beautiful Egyptian women of all social classes would begin a grueling routine that could take hours to complete. The process started before dawn, when servants would wake their mistresses to begin the elaborate transformation required to meet the day's expectations. But this was no gentle morning routine. It was a harsh regiment that pushed the human body to its limits in pursuit of divine perfection. The foundation of Egyptian beauty was the skin, which needed to be flawless, luminous, and untouched by the harsh desert environment. To achieve this impossible standard, women would undergo daily treatments that were as painful as they were effective. The first step involved scrubbing the entire body with rough pumice stones and salt crystals, abrading away dead skin until the surface was raw and tender. This process, while necessary for achieving the smooth texture demanded by society, left the skin vulnerable and often bleeding. Following this brutal exfoliation, a mixture of animal fats, plant oils, and ground minerals would be massaged into the traumatized skin. While this provided some relief and nourishment, many of these concoctions contained lead-based compounds that we now know were slowly poisoning the users. The beautiful, pale complexion so prized in Egyptian society was often achieved through regular application of white lead paint, which gradually accumulated in the body, causing neurological damage, kidney failure, and premature death. But the skin treatments were only the beginning. The eyes, considered the windows to the soul, and the most important feature for reflecting divine beauty, required the most extensive and dangerous preparation. The iconic kohl that lined Egyptian eyes was made from galena, a lead sulfide mineral that was ground into fine powder and mixed with animal fat or plant oils. While this created the dramatic, elongated eye shape that was central to Egyptian aesthetics, the lead content was gradually destroying the vision and nervous systems of those who used it daily. The application process itself was an ordeal that required steady hands and enormous patience. Using thin reeds or metal applicators, servants would carefully line the eyes with multiple layers of kohl, extending the lines far beyond the natural eye shape to create the distinctive almond-shaped appearance favored by the gods. This process had to be repeated several times throughout the day, as the desert heat and daily activities would cause the makeup to smudge and fade. For the most beautiful women in Egyptian society, the expectations went far beyond basic kohl application. Intricate designs were painted around the eyes using precious pigments made from crushed beetles, ground malachite, and other exotic materials. These designs often incorporated religious symbols and hieroglyphic elements that were believed to provide divine protection, but the pressure to maintain these complex patterns meant that any smudging or imperfection could be seen as a spiritual failing. The hair presented another enormous challenge in maintaining ancient Egyptian beauty standards. The ideal Egyptian hairstyle was elaborate, perfectly symmetrical, and completely impractical for daily life. Most wealthy women wore complex wigs made from human hair, which had to be carefully maintained by teams of servants who specialized in wig styling and care. These wigs were incredibly heavy, often weighing several pounds, and caused severe neck strain and headaches for those who wore them for extended periods. But natural hair underneath these wigs faced its own torments. To ensure a smooth wig-ready scalp, many Egyptian women would shave their heads completely, a process that had to be repeated frequently to maintain the desired effect. The constant shaving led to razor cuts, infections, and permanent scarring of the scalp. Some women chose instead to use depilatory creams made from arsenic and other toxic substances, which removed hair effectively but often caused chemical burns and skin damage. The most beautiful women were expected to change their wigs multiple times throughout the day, depending on the occasion and time. Religious ceremonies demanded certain styles, court appearances required others, and evening entertainment called for yet different configurations. Each wig change was a complex process that could take an hour or more, during which the wearer had to remain perfectly still while servants worked around them. For those who couldn't afford elaborate wigs, maintaining beautiful hair required different but equally demanding routines. Hair had to be washed frequently with harsh soaps made from animal fat and lye, which stripped the hair of natural oils and often caused breakage and scalp irritation. To achieve the glossy black hair considered most beautiful, women would apply dyes made from henna, indigo, and various plant extracts, many of which contained toxic compounds that absorbed through the scalp. The pursuit of beautiful hair also involved elaborate braiding and styling techniques that put enormous stress on the hair follicles. Complex braided styles that incorporated gold threads, beads, and ornamental elements were so tight that they often caused permanent hair loss and scalp damage. Many women developed bald patches and scarring from years of tight braiding, ironically destroying their natural beauty in pursuit of artificial perfection. As we move deeper into the daily reality of maintaining beauty in ancient Egypt, we encounter the realm of body modification and decoration that pushed the human form to its limits. The ideal Egyptian body was tall, slender, and perfectly proportioned according to strict mathematical ratios that were believed to reflect divine harmony. Achieving and maintaining this ideal often required extreme measures that severely impacted health and quality of life. Diet played a crucial role in maintaining the desired body shape, but the methods used were often devastating to long-term health. Beautiful women were expected to maintain an extremely slender figure that bordered on emaciation, particularly in the waist and limbs. To achieve this look, many resorted to severely restrictive diets that provided barely enough nutrition for survival. Wealthy women would consume primarily bread, beer, and small amounts of vegetables, deliberately avoiding proteins and fats that might add bulk to their frames. Some women took even more extreme measures, using various plant-based purgatives and emetics to prevent their bodies from retaining food. These substances, made from plants like castor oil tree seeds and certain desert cacti, would cause violent vomiting and diarrhea that prevented nutrient absorption. While effective for maintaining the desired thinness, this practice led to chronic malnutrition, dehydration, and eventually organ failure. The pressure to maintain perfect proportions also led to the practice of tight binding of various body parts. Young girls from wealthy families would have their waists bound with tight cloth strips from an early age, gradually training their torsos into the narrow, elongated shape, considered most beautiful. This binding, similar to corsetry in later periods, often displaced internal organs and made breathing difficult. Many women who underwent this practice suffered from chronic pain and internal injuries throughout their lives. Foot binding, while more commonly associated with later Chinese culture, also existed in certain periods of Egyptian history among the highest nobility. Beautiful women in the pharaoh's court sometimes had their feet bound to create small, narrow feet that were considered elegant and refined. This practice made walking extremely difficult and painful, essentially requiring these women to be carried or supported whenever they needed to move, turning their beauty into a form of physical disability. The decoration of the body with jewelry and ornaments created additional burdens for beautiful Egyptian women. The elaborate gold and silver jewelry that adorned the most attractive women was incredibly heavy and often caused physical deformity over time. Large, ornate earrings stretched and damaged earlobes, heavy necklaces caused neck and spine problems, and massive armbands and anklets restricted circulation and movement. Some of the most prized beauty accessories were also the most dangerous. Jewelry made with precious stones often incorporated toxic materials like cinnabar, mercury sulfide, and realgar, arsenic sulfide, which slowly poisoned the wearer through skin contact. The beautiful red and orange colors achieved through these minerals came at the cost of neurological damage and eventual death from heavy metal poisoning. The process of piercing ears, nose, and other body parts for jewelry was performed without modern sanitary techniques or pain management. Infections were common and often led to serious complications or death. The larger the piercing required for more elaborate jewelry, the greater the risk of permanent damage or life-threatening infection. As we journey deeper into the shadows of ancient Egyptian beauty culture, we encounter the realm of cosmetics and their hidden dangers. The elaborate makeup that created the stunning visual effects we associate with ancient Egyptian beauty was often a cocktail of toxic substances that slowly destroyed the very people who wore them. The quest for perfect skin color involved the use of numerous dangerous pigments and chemicals. To achieve the pale, luminous complexion favored by the upper classes, women would apply daily doses of white lead paint mixed with chalk and other whitening agents. This practice, while effective for creating the desired appearance, gradually accumulated lead in the body, causing symptoms that began with fatigue and irritability, but progressed to seizures, paralysis, and death. For those seeking a more golden complexion that suggested divine favor, the alternatives were equally hazardous. Golden skin tones were achieved through the application of compounds containing gold dust mixed with mercury, creating a beautiful but deadly combination that caused mercury poisoning. The symptoms of mercury poisoning were often mistaken for divine possession or spiritual transformation, as they included tremors, mood swings, and altered mental states that were sometimes interpreted as religious experiences. The rosy cheeks and lips that completed the perfect Egyptian beauty look were created using pigments derived from insects, plants, and minerals that were often highly toxic. Cochineal insects were crushed to create brilliant red dyes, but the processing often involved toxic preservatives and additives. Plant-based dyes frequently contained alkaloids and other poisonous compounds that absorbed through the skin and accumulated in vital organs. One of the most prized cosmetic ingredients was antimony, a metallic element that created beautiful silver and black pigments for eye makeup. However, antimony is highly toxic and causes a range of serious health problems, including heart irregularities, lung damage, and skin disorders. Women who used antimony-based cosmetics regularly often developed a characteristic skin condition that created a beautiful, almost translucent quality to the skin, but this effect was actually a sign of severe antimony poisoning. The application tools themselves presented additional hazards. Makeup brushes were often made from animal hair that wasn't properly cleaned or sterilized, leading to skin infections and the spread of diseases. Metal applicators for eye makeup were frequently contaminated with rust and other corrosive substances that damaged the delicate skin around the eyes. The sharing of makeup tools among servants and multiple women in wealthy households spread infections and parasites throughout entire communities. The daily removal of these elaborate cosmetics was almost as damaging as their application. The harsh cleansing agents needed to remove lead-based makeup, and other stubborn pigments were made from lye, animal fat, and abrasive materials that stripped away not just makeup, but also the skin's natural protective barriers. This daily cycle of applying toxic substances and then aggressively removing them created a pattern of chemical assault that aged the skin prematurely and caused chronic irritation and damage. For the most beautiful women in Egyptian society, the cosmetic routine extended far beyond the face and body to include the modification and decoration of teeth. Perfect white teeth were considered essential for true beauty, and achieving this ideal involved practices that were often more destructive than beneficial. Teeth were cleaned using abrasive powders made from crushed pumice stone, salt, and dried animal dung, which effectively removed stains but also wore away tooth enamel, leading to severe decay and eventual tooth loss. Some wealthy women had their teeth filed into specific shapes, or had gold caps and decorative inlays installed to enhance their beauty. These procedures, performed without anesthesia or proper sterilization, were excruciatingly painful and often led to infections that could spread throughout the body. The gold dental work, while beautiful, often interfered with normal eating and speaking, making basic daily functions difficult and uncomfortable. As we continue our exploration of the hidden costs of beauty in ancient Egypt, we turn our attention to the social and political dangers that exceptional beauty brought to those who possessed it. In a society where physical perfection was seen as a reflection of divine favor, being too beautiful could mark someone as a threat to the established order or as a valuable commodity to be exploited by those in power. The most beautiful women in ancient Egypt found themselves caught in a complex web of political intrigue and power struggles that often determined the fate of entire dynasties. Their beauty made them valuable assets in diplomatic marriages, political alliances, and court machinations, but it also made them targets for elimination when their influence became too great or when political winds shifted. Consider the story of Ankhesenamun, one of the daughters of the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, and the famous beauty Nefertiti. Born into a family renowned for their exceptional attractiveness, Ankhesenamun inherited not only her parents' striking features, but also their dangerous political legacy. Her beauty made her a valuable prize in the royal marriage market, but it also marked her as a living reminder of her father's controversial religious reforms. When Ankhesenamun was still a young child, her beauty was already being noted by court officials and foreign diplomats. Letters discovered in ancient archives describe her as having the face of a goddess and eyes that captured the light of Re himself. But these compliments came with hidden dangers, as they marked her as a potential tool for political manipulation and dynastic scheming. As Ankhesenamun reached marriageable age, her extraordinary beauty became both her greatest asset and her most dangerous liability. She was married to her half-brother Tutankhamun, who became pharaoh while still a young boy. This marriage was arranged not out of love or personal preference, but because Ankhesenamun's beauty and royal lineage made her the perfect choice to legitimize Tutankhamun's rule and provide visual continuity with the previous dynasty. The marriage placed enormous pressure on Ankhesenamun to maintain her appearance and bearing at all times, as she was constantly scrutinized by court officials, foreign ambassadors, and religious leaders who saw her as a symbol of Egyptian divine perfection. Every aspect of her appearance was analyzed for signs of divine favor or disfavor, and any perceived flaw or imperfection could be interpreted as a bad omen for the kingdom. The responsibility of representing divine beauty took its toll on Ankhesenamun's physical and mental health. She was required to undergo daily beauty rituals that lasted for hours, and she could never appear in public without full makeup, elaborate jewelry, and perfect clothing. The constant pressure to maintain this impossible standard led to chronic stress, eating disorders, and the physical health problems associated with continuous use of toxic cosmetics. When Tutankhamun died mysteriously at a young age, Ankhesenamun's beauty became both a political asset and a death sentence. As a beautiful young widow with royal blood, she was immediately seen as a valuable prize by various political factions seeking to legitimize their claims to power. At the same time, her connection to the controversial Amarna period and her potential to produce heirs made her a threat to those who wanted to completely erase her family's legacy. Historical records suggest that Ankhesenamun may have attempted to arrange her own marriage to a foreign prince to escape the political pressures in Egypt. But this desperate gambit failed when the prince was murdered before reaching Egypt. Left vulnerable and isolated, Ankhesenamun disappeared from historical records shortly after, likely becoming another casualty of the political machinations that her beauty had both enabled and ultimately made inevitable. The fate of Ankhesenamun illustrates a pattern that repeated throughout Egyptian history. Exceptional beauty in women of royal or noble birth often led to political manipulation, forced marriages, and ultimately tragic ends. These women became symbols and tools rather than individuals, their worth measured entirely by their appearance and their ability to produce heirs or cement political alliances. Another example of beauty's dangerous political implications can be found in the story of Arsinoe II, a Ptolemaic queen whose striking appearance and intelligence made her one of the most powerful women in the ancient Mediterranean world. Born into the Greek-Egyptian royal family that ruled Egypt after Alexander the Great's conquest, Arsinoe inherited the classical Greek features that were prized by the Ptolemaic dynasty, along with the traditional Egyptian beauty standards that legitimized their rule. Arsinoe's beauty was legendary, even in her own time, described by contemporary historians as combining the best features of both Greek and Egyptian ideals. Her perfect oval face, large dark eyes, and elegant bearing made her a favorite subject for artists and sculptors throughout the Mediterranean. Coins bearing her image were circulated widely, spreading her reputation for beauty across the ancient world and making her face one of the most recognizable in the region. But this fame and recognition came with severe costs. Arsinoe's beauty made her a valuable diplomatic asset, and she was married multiple times to seal political alliances, regardless of her personal preferences or desires. Her first marriage to Lysimachus of Thrace was arranged when she was still a teenager, forcing her to leave Egypt and live among people whose customs and language were foreign to her. The marriage to Lysimachus was marked by constant political intrigue and violence, as various factions sought to use Arsinoe's beauty and royal connections for their own purposes. She witnessed multiple assassinations and coup attempts, living in constant fear that her beauty and political value might make her the next target. The stress of this environment took a severe toll on her health, and contemporary accounts describe her as aging rapidly during this period despite her youth. When Lysimachus was killed in battle, Arsinoe found herself once again a valuable political prize. Her beauty and royal bloodline made her attractive to numerous potential suitors, but she had learned the dangerous game of royal politics well enough to understand that her next marriage would likely determine not just her own fate, but the future of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt. In a move that shocked the ancient world, Arsinoe married her own brother, Ptolemy II, following the Egyptian tradition of royal sibling marriage that was designed to keep power within the family and maintain the purity of the royal bloodline. This marriage was successful in political terms, as their combined beauty and charisma made them popular with the Egyptian people and effective leaders in their own right. However, the physical and psychological costs of maintaining their image as divine beautiful rulers were enormous. Both Arsinoe and Ptolemy were required to present themselves as living embodiments of divine perfection, which meant undergoing daily beauty rituals and never appearing in public without complete makeup and elaborate costumes. The pressure to maintain this divine image led to increasing isolation from normal human contact and growing dependence on court physicians who prescribed various substances to maintain their appearance and energy. Arsinoe's story demonstrates how beauty in the royal context became a form of performance art that consumed the performer. Every public appearance was carefully choreographed to maximize the visual impact of her appearance, and every aspect of her daily routine was designed to maintain the physical perfection that legitimized her political power. The beautiful queen became a prisoner of her own image, trapped in a cycle of cosmetic rituals and public performances that left little room for personal autonomy or genuine human relationships. As we delve deeper into the shadows of ancient Egyptian beauty culture, we encounter the religious dimensions that made physical perfection not just a social expectation, but a spiritual obligation. In ancient Egyptian theology, beauty was directly connected to divine favor and cosmic order, meaning that the most beautiful individuals were expected to serve as intermediaries between the human and divine realms. This sacred responsibility brought with it a crushing burden of religious duties and ritual obligations that often proved more demanding than any political role. The concept of Ma'at, or cosmic balance, was central to Egyptian religious thought, and physical beauty was seen as one of the most important manifestations of this divine order. Beautiful women were therefore expected to participate in elaborate religious ceremonies and rituals that were designed to maintain the balance between the human world and the realm of the gods. These ceremonies often involved hours of preparation, complex choreographed movements, and exposure to dangerous substances used in religious purification and offering rituals. The role of sacred beauty meant that the most attractive women in Egyptian society were often required to serve as priestesses or temple attendants, positions that came with enormous prestige but also severe physical and psychological demands. Temple service required maintaining perfect physical appearance at all times, as any perceived flaw or imperfection could be interpreted as a sign that the gods had withdrawn their favor from the temple and its community. The daily routine of a beautiful temple priestess was exhausting and often dangerous. Each morning began before dawn with ritual purification that involved bathing in sacred pools containing various dissolved minerals and plant extracts. While these baths were intended to purify the spirit and prepare the body for divine service, they often contained caustic substances that caused skin irritation and long-term damage to the hair and nails. Following purification, the priestess would undergo an elaborate makeup and dressing ritual that could take several hours to complete. Every aspect of this process was governed by strict religious protocols that dictated specific colors, patterns, and decorative elements that corresponded to various deities and celestial events. The makeup used in these religious contexts often contained even more toxic substances than everyday cosmetics, as the brilliant colors and metallic effects considered necessary for divine service required the use of particularly dangerous pigments and compounds. The religious ceremonies themselves placed enormous physical demands on beautiful priestesses. Many rituals required hours of standing in uncomfortable positions, performing repetitive movements, or holding heavy ritual objects while maintaining perfect posture and facial expressions. The elaborate headdresses and costumes worn during these ceremonies were often incredibly heavy and restrictive, causing back problems, neck strain, and difficulty breathing. Some of the most important religious ceremonies required beautiful priestesses to fast for extended periods or to consume ritual substances that altered their mental states. These practices were believed to bring them closer to the divine realm, but they often resulted in malnutrition, dehydration, and psychological trauma. The combination of physical demands, toxic substances, and psychological pressure created a dangerous environment that few could endure for extended periods without serious health consequences. The religious significance of beauty also meant that beautiful women were often called upon to participate in funerary rituals and ceremonies related to death and the afterlife. These ceremonies frequently involved exposure to mummification chemicals, burial preparations, and other substances that were highly toxic. The beautiful women who served as mourners and ritual participants in these ceremonies often suffered from respiratory problems, skin conditions, and other health issues related to their exposure to these dangerous materials. Perhaps most challenging of all was the expectation that beautiful priestesses would maintain their divine appearance even while performing these demanding religious duties. They were required to look perfect at all times, which meant reapplying makeup throughout long ceremonies, maintaining elaborate hairstyles despite physical exertion, and never showing signs of fatigue or discomfort that might suggest they were merely human rather than divine intermediaries. The psychological pressure of serving as a living representation of divine beauty was often more damaging than the physical demands. Beautiful priestesses were constantly scrutinized by worshippers and religious officials who looked for any sign that their beauty was divinely inspired rather than merely human attractiveness. Any perceived flaw or imperfection could result in removal from religious service, social disgrace, and loss of the economic security that came with temple positions. As we continue our exploration of the burdens of beauty in ancient Egypt, we must examine the economic costs that came with maintaining the appearance standards demanded by Egyptian society. Beauty was expensive, and the financial pressure of meeting these expectations could bankrupt families and create cycles of debt and dependency that lasted for generations. The daily cosmetic routine required by beautiful Egyptian women involved a vast array of expensive ingredients, tools, and services that put enormous strain on family finances. The basic cosmetics needed for everyday appearance included various oils, pigments, perfumes, and application tools, many of which had to be imported from distant lands at great expense. A single jar of high-quality coal could cost as much as a farmer's monthly income, and the elaborate makeup required for special occasions could represent a significant percentage of a family's annual earnings. The most beautiful women required even more expensive cosmetic treatments and ingredients. Rare pigments made from precious stones, exotic oils extracted from plants that grew only in distant countries, and perfumes containing ingredients from animals found only in remote regions were all considered necessary for maintaining the highest standards of beauty. These luxury cosmetics were so expensive that many families had to choose between maintaining their daughter's beauty and providing basic necessities like food and shelter. The economic burden extended far beyond cosmetics to include clothing, jewelry, and the servants required to maintain elaborate beauty routines. Beautiful women were expected to own multiple sets of fine linen garments for different occasions, and these had to be replaced frequently, as the harsh Egyptian climate and demanding beauty rituals took their toll on delicate fabrics. The jewelry required to complete the ideal Egyptian beauty look represented enormous investments in precious metals and stones that many families could barely afford. The time requirements of Egyptian beauty routines also created significant economic impacts. Beautiful women often spent so many hours each day on cosmetic preparation and maintenance that they were unable to contribute productively to their family's economic activities. The servants required to assist with elaborate beauty routines represented additional expenses that had to be balanced against other family needs. Many families went into debt to maintain their daughter's beauty, hoping that exceptional attractiveness would lead to advantageous marriages or other opportunities that would justify the investment. However, the costs of maintaining beauty often continued to increase over time, as aging required more expensive treatments and procedures to maintain the same visual effects. Families often found themselves trapped in cycles of debt as they struggled to maintain beauty standards that became more expensive and difficult to achieve with each passing year. As we reach the end of our journey through the hidden shadows of ancient Egyptian beauty, we begin to see how the pursuit of physical perfection created a complex web of physical, social, political, religious, and economic pressures that often made extraordinary beauty more of a curse than a blessing. The women who possessed the divine beauty so prized by Egyptian society found themselves trapped in systems of expectation and obligation that consumed their health, freedom, and often their lives. The daily struggle to achieve and maintain perfect appearance in the harsh Egyptian environment was a form of slow torture that gradually destroyed the very beauty it was meant to preserve. The toxic cosmetics, painful procedures, and extreme physical demands of beauty maintenance created health problems that shortened lives and reduced quality of life for even the most privileged women in society. The political and social dimensions of beauty made exceptional attractiveness a liability as much as an asset, marking beautiful women as valuable commodities to be traded, manipulated, and ultimately discarded when their usefulness ended. The religious significance of beauty created additional layers of obligation and pressure that turned divine gifts into spiritual burdens that few could bear without serious psychological damage. The economic costs of beauty created financial pressures that affected not just individual women, but entire families and communities, creating cycles of debt and dependency that persisted across generations. The time and resources devoted to beauty maintenance represented enormous opportunity costs that prevented women from developing other skills or contributing to society in alternative ways. Perhaps most tragically, the obsession with perfect beauty often prevented ancient Egyptians from appreciating the natural beauty and individual characteristics that made each person unique. The rigid beauty standards imposed by society created a homogenized ideal that erased individual variation and personal expression in favor of conformity to artificial standards that few could achieve without serious sacrifice. Yet even as we acknowledge the terrible costs of ancient Egyptian beauty culture, we can also recognize the incredible strength and resilience of the women who navigated these challenging systems. Despite the enormous pressures they faced, many found ways to exercise agency within restrictive circumstances, to form meaningful relationships despite social constraints, and to leave legacies that extended far beyond their physical appearance. The stories of women like Ankhesenamun and Arsinoe II remind us that even in the most oppressive circumstances, individuals can find ways to assert their humanity and create meaning in their lives. Their struggles with the burdens of beauty offer insights into the continuing challenges faced by people in societies that place excessive emphasis on physical appearance and external validation. As we reflect on these ancient struggles, we might also consider how contemporary beauty culture continues to create similar pressures and problems for people in our own time. The pursuit of perfect appearance continues to consume enormous resources and create physical and psychological health problems for people around the world. The lessons learned from ancient Egypt's beauty culture offer valuable perspectives on the importance of developing more balanced and humane approaches to beauty and self-worth. The women of ancient Egypt who bore the burden of exceptional beauty may have lived thousands of years ago, but their experiences speak to timeless human struggles with identity, self-worth, and the pressure to conform to societal expectations. Their stories remind us that true beauty comes not from achieving impossible standards of physical perfection, but from developing the inner strength, wisdom, and compassion that allow us to navigate life's challenges with grace and dignity. As we conclude our exploration of why it sucked to be beautiful in ancient Egypt, let us carry with us the memory of these remarkable women who endured so much in pursuit of an ideal that ultimately proved hollow and destructive. May their struggles inspire us to create more compassionate and realistic standards of beauty in our own time. And may we remember that the most meaningful beauty comes from the strength of character and depth of spirit that no cosmetic can create or destroy. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows of ancient Egyptian beauty culture. I hope this exploration has provided new insights into the complexities of historical beauty standards and their impact on the people who lived within them. As you drift off to sleep, may you find peace in the knowledge that true beauty lies not in achieving impossible standards, but in embracing the unique qualities that make each of us wonderfully human. Sweet dreams of a world where beauty brings joy rather than suffering, and where every person is valued for the fullness of their humanity rather than the perfection of their appearance.